really good like introductory to a thoughtful action series can be, I would check out Invincible Fight Girl.
Women's Wrestling Talk, the #1 women's wrestling network on the planet.
Bonjour, you're watching Women's Wrestling Talk, the #1 women's wrestling show on the planet. My name is TK Trinidad, and today we have an amazing show and, of course, nothing but amazing guests. He's the creator of the hit show Invincible Fight Girl. Please welcome Juston Gordon-Montgomery, and he's the supervising producer of the Invincible Fight Girl. Please welcome Bryan Newton. How are you guys doing?
Good. Happy to be here.
Yep. Going all right.
Thanks for coming on. I remember when I saw the commercial for this, it was sometime last year during a WWE event or a taping through of WWE. Kind of tell me the process of kind of getting this on the air, season 1, all that stuff.
Sure. Yeah. I first came up with the idea kind of back in 2016. And from there, the pieces weren't fully together. So a lot of times you'll go on these general meetings with studios. And it's kind of just to get to know people. You're not necessarily pitching a thing. So I went on one with Cartoon Network, and there was an exec there who, they usually throw out the question if there's anything that you're thinking about or anything that is interesting to you. And I mentioned that I had been a big fan of wrestling, and I felt like in the US, there hadn't really been a wrestling cartoon kind of since like Mucha Lucha. And even then, like Mucha Lucha was taking it serious, but wasn't really like digging into, like what is the journey of someone who really wants to do this? And like, what do those trials and tribulations look like for someone who is trying to go on this path? And then also just in terms of the depiction of wrestling, making it feel like the hits were hard, making it feel like it was really trying to describe visually some of the moves that were in real life wrestling. And so the person was really receptive to it. And then kind of from there, we just started developing it.
Yeah, because like obviously there's only like a sprinkling of wrestling cartoons that ever existed in this country. And like Justin said, they're never serious. They're always comedies. Going back in the 80s, there was the Rock and Roll Wrestling Show with like the WWE or WWF superstars of that era. And again, comedy show. So like when Justin's idea for this wrestling show was like, let's take the elements that we know currently of how action shows are produced and also the framing of like Japanese animation production. And if you look back, they have a ton of wrestling shows like Tiger Mask or even Ultimate Muscle is what it's known here. I think it's Kinnikuman. Yeah. So like we're taking basically those elements and mishing them for like an American animation production.
So then how do you develop, I think I know the answer, but I'm going to ask for general public. How do you make it such a diverse cast of characters, and what made you decide to go with Andy as essentially the main character?
Yeah, I mean, for me, one of the things that I loved about wrestling growing up was it felt so colorful, and it felt like it wasn't just guys and girls in tights. It was like people who were dressed up in costume and people who were like, this guy's a robot and he's really a robot. That's his backstory. And so to me, a big part of even wanting to do this in the first place felt like I needed to try to create a world that was at the very least as diverse and as interesting as the wrestling I watched growing up. And so to me, that just felt like, if we're doing a wrestling cartoon, that's mandatory. That has to be in there. And then as far as how I arrived at Andy, a lot of it came down to what was the type of story I wanted to tell. And I took a lot of inspiration from a lot of the shonens that I watched growing up, where I felt like what was really interesting about those protagonists were having characters who not only were sort of driven by a dream, but like that character was sort of the metaphor for someone chasing that dream. And so for me, my entry point into that was asking this question of like, well, what does it look like for a young person to be embarking on entering this sport or this thing that they really love, but they don't know a whole lot about? They don't know how hard it is to do it. And they don't know how, what the heights are of that thing. And so to me, Andy was sort of the ultimate like young person who just has nothing but excitement, nothing but enthusiasm, and is going to have that sort of meet real life and have to bump her head a whole lot of times in order to sort of realize what the reality is of chasing her dream.
Justin already had the concept pretty fully formed by the time I came on board. He already had the pitch in the Bible. So Andy, Casey Poblana, P, and like Craig and Mikey were already like characters when I came on. So my main contribution to this is just helping Justin on like developing the core shonen aspect of it. And part of that is making sure Andy feels like a legit shonen protagonist, where her dreams and her goals are like the center of her drive. Also, her empathy and her passion is also what connects her to the audience. So I remember, Justin, you were talking about one of the main elements of our action in this show is the fact that like you're in her head when she's doing her moves, and she's discovering her moves as the audience is discovering something you don't see in American shows. Like any superhero show, they're almost always fully formed and they have their moves and you're just watching them execute on screen. But with our show, that's not the case. She had one move in the beginning. It's the ankle crank, and she milks that for all it's worth in the beginning. So that's another unique aspect that's very typical to shonen / manga or anime, but like that's something we rarely do in the States.
And so like, was it intentional as far as like, is Andy based off of somebody that you know, as far as like, you know, the personality and the, because I see what I really liked about this, and I binge watched it and I recommend everybody do, you know, she's very much like a lot of Black females I know, like, oh no, we're gonna do this, and I don't care I don't care how, you know what, I don't know how it's gonna get done, it's just gonna get done, you know, very much you know, focused type mentality. So is there somebody in particular that you base this character off of, or is it just more of a, this is just how Black women be doing it?
It's a great question. Like we all know people like that, like mothers, teachers, and like that. Like I have a best friend who's like my friend from like grade school. She like hung out with us and like knocked her heads around like the same as the rest of us. So if Justin, you know somebody like that I'd be curious to know.
Yeah, I mean, I think I've known people like that all throughout my life, but I think no one person in particular comes to mind. I think I was sort of channeling an amalgamation of those people, and particularly, you know, myself and other people in different things that over my life that I've tried, where you get into like a sport or you get into a hobby or something like that. You could just do it for fun. And then there's someone there who's like, I really want to do this and I want to be the best in the world at it. For example, I boxed for like 10 years. That's a space where almost everyone you meet is kind of an Andy. Like no one is coming to that, I mean, unless someone's just doing it for fitness. No one is coming to that being like, yeah, you know, maybe we'll see what happens. Like everyone is like, I'm going to be the best. And at some point, like I'm going to be good enough to beat Floyd Mayweather. And it's like a 16-year-old saying that to you. And, you know, there's something really dope and at the same time kind of surreal about what is the type of confidence and the type of personality that you have to have in order to come into something that has, again, such great heights. You know, you're coming into a sport where Mike Tyson exists, a Pacquiao exists, and you as someone starting from level 1 go, yeah, one day I'm going to beat them. Like, you know, there's a certain archetype and a personality makeup of what that takes. And so Andy was kind of meant to be an amalgamation of all of the people I had seen who had those traits.
Yeah, and I'd also want to give credit to like Sydney just also carries a lot of that to her voice performance. If any attitude that like you guys picked up on is because like that's her experience as well.
And you know, yes, Sydney did an amazing job, but you had like, you cannot deny this man's voice, Keith David. When you hear, like, you just know. And actually, ironically, there's somebody that I've worked with that's also on the show, Carla Renata. Like we've done red carpets together and stuff like that. So it's kind of crazy. It's like, wait, what? How did you get Sydney to play Ed? Like, how did it kind of all the voiceovers and characters come to be who they are?
Keith was just straight up luck of the draw. When we came up with the role for him, I just had him in mind. And it was sort of like a long shot of like, would he even want to be involved in something like this? And so with someone like him, you know, you don't audition him. You either offer him the role or not, and then he decides if he's interested. So we had to send him over pages and basically describe what the role was. And then it was entirely up to him if he was like interested or if he found it to be compelling or not. And so luckily he did. And he was like, yeah, I really like this guy. And I want to, like, he even asked for a picture of this character. So I was like, oh shit, he like really likes it. But then for a lot of other people, a lot of it comes down to when you're first writing and when you're first coming up with the concept for the character, doing your best to try to picture like what that voice is. And then when you do the casting process, trying to sort of cast for that. And even a lot of that comes down to like, what are the types of lines that you have people read? For example, with Sydney, when we were auditioning for Andy's, we could have just put out some lines that are just her talking with her friends or something like that. But it was like, well, we need to get the essence of who that character is. And so a lot of that is like fighting. And a lot of that is like her screaming and capturing the intensity when she's talking about her dreams or anything like that. So a lot of it was specifically getting those lines, throwing those out there, also trying to make sure that we're giving the right direction so that people know what we're going for. And then actors and actresses just sort of bringing their A game and us being able to see what people brought to it.
Juston was mainly involved in that part of the voice casting process. I didn't do much of anything. But when Keith David showed up, I was happy to have him, and Clancy Brown, because they're old school all-stars.
Mm-hmm.
I also think like Keith is just having his little animation renaissance right now. He's in like everything. So when you're like, hey, can we get Goliath on the show? It's like, yeah. It's like, we'll do that because they're not rebooting Gargoyles at any point.
Right.
So what challenges did we often talk about, and I'm not really familiar as far as the animation space, as far as bringing it to the light of as far as television. But I know in other spaces, it's often, hard to get melanated faces on projects and on major networks. Was there any challenges in bringing this to light, or or in a space like this, are you asked to like, oh, can we lighten up the characters, or like, is that a thing?
Yeah, it runs into several gamuts. Like when we were producing this, it was like kind of towards the end of the COVID and after the Warner Bros. Discovery merger. That's probably the thing that affected us the most.
Mm-hmm.
Where now you're dealing with productions like things are getting cut for arbitrary reasons, for tax breaks and et cetera, that they're just not as certain to be producing shows that they used to be. Cartoon Network at the time was also like scaling down a lot on its production. So like we're basically like doing it like this with our fingers crossed. Like, are we going to get cut? Or are we not going to get cut? Like Juston can definitely talk more about that. But as far as producing animated shows with people of color or just Black folks in general, you'll always run into, because like most of the executives aren't Black people. They're going to be often white folks in this country. So you're often going to have to like explain yourself and explain why these characters matter the way they are and the way we present them. That's usually how it goes. And they'll be receptive to it to a point. And then if you want to do like a Black show, then it's just going to be everything on the table. But most times, like with Fight Girl, we weren't just making a Black show. We were making a show with a Black character. And so similar like Craig of the Creek, where it's just like you change the ethnicity of the character, it doesn't change the show.
I was going to say, for us, I think because things were so tumultuous at the sort of administrative side, it ended up, both biting us in the ass and also kind of working to our favor, because we ended up kind of flying under the radar. Like there's so many bigger fish to fry. People are like worried about their jobs, and they're worried about like, are they even going to be at this organization? So I don't think they're super concerned with what we're doing. But at the same time, I think the downside of that is because people are sort of looking the other way and trying to get their ducks in the row towards other things, we become this show that is either we just thug it out and make it work with what we have, or the Eye of Sauron looks at us and then trouble happens. So a lot of the challenges were just not having a lot of resources and sort of just being like, okay, well, this is what we have. How can we make something that doesn't look like we didn't have a lot of resources?
Because like you remember, Juston, we were often like towards when we're in the thick of production, we're like, we're not getting a ton of notes about what we're doing. And that's also scary. You never want too many notes, but you also don't want no notes. Feels like they're going to cut you like that because we don't
right.
Get rid of you. Yeah. But when there's too many notes, it's like, oh, they're going to ruin it.
And I mean, you see the timing of it is crazy, because you saw, the renaissance of women's wrestlers, and then also not a renaissance, it's, you're seeing Black women wrestlers on a whole nother level. It's crazy right now. I honestly didn't think I was going to see it. So the timing is actually like really like crazy in itself. And I know you said you didn't really get a lot of notes, but is there anything kind of coming from the higher ups as far as, the parallels? Because, you're seeing WWE with the Netflix deal and all this other stuff. And you're seeing, Bianca and Jade on all these, mainstream media TV shows and stuff like that. Are people, in the offices saying, okay, like we're seeing this, like we actually might have something here? Or is it, they're not getting it?
Yeah, I can't understate how tumultuous it was. I think for a lot of people who are worried about their jobs, I think some of those things came later. Like I think once we were mostly done with the show, or even once we were done with the show and I was kind of the last person on it, people started seeing some opportunities, and they started seeing like, oh wow, there's some nice crossover happening here. Maybe we can start to lean into that. I think at the time, we would have hoped that people would have saw those opportunities, but I think, people are just like, do I have a job tomorrow?
Yeah, any sort of synergy with like what was coming on through wrestling, especially in WWE, completely by accident. When we're developing the show and we're working on it, we're just thinking about the characters in the world we want to build. We're not thinking like what's going on in the real world. And so we were happy to see people like Jaden Ridley coming up. And it's now, I'm from like the 80s, 90s era of wrestling. So like for me, it was like just the dudes, and the women were there. They're usually just kind of presented as eye candy, which sucked, like China. And she was like the main hit for the early 90s, the Attitude Era. So I was like, cool now. And like I've actually saw at a buddy of ours, Nick, who was on our background team, they hosted the Royal Rumble for this new one, and it's like there's a full gamut of like women wrestlers and there's full gamut of men wrestlers. I'm like, it's equal now. I've never seen this before. So it's completely by accident. I'm actually glad to see that there's so many young women who are interested in like participating in such a like a goofy, ridiculous show or sport.
It's quite entertaining. With that being said, I mean, you kind of developed these characters in the show, and it kind of left on a little bit of a cliffhanger. And for folks who are like, well, why aren't you saying much about this? Because y'all need to watch it. That's why I'm not, giving away any dip. But you kind of left it on a cliffhanger. Honestly, when shout out to Sarah, the homie, because she was the one who told me about you guys. I think I saw the advertisement for this show like back in the summer. I didn't realize that it debuted in November. With that being said, like, have you been getting like a lot of feedback from viewers? Are we looking at a season 2? Because you left it off in a good like, okay, well, what's going to happen next? So has there been any word?
There's been a lot of feedback, and it's been positive in a way that we couldn't have dreamed. Again, I think the process of making it was so like we couldn't see a couple feet in front of our face. We're just going. We're making a thing that we think people will like. We have no clue if it's going to come out. We have no clue where it's going to go. And so even just the fact that people watched it and responded the way they did was hugely gratifying for me and the team. As far as season 2, we don't know yet. It takes them a long time to figure out if they want to do more stuff. So we're in that sort of waiting period right now. But yeah, the cliffhanger was definitely intentional. It's definitely sort of there's a lot more of the story we haven't really even scratched the tip of the iceberg. So yeah, we definitely want to do more.
The structure of the journey is not something we plan to do in like just a season or two, because the world to feel large and epic. Obviously, we were mentioning shonen, but like if you look at any fight shonen like Bleach, Naruto, and obviously One Piece, Dragon Ball, and Hunter x Hunter, those aren't stories that are told within 20 episodes, because the journey of it has to take place over a span of time. And I think the audience like recognizes that. So I think the demand for season 2 is high enough that like it'll start ringing in like some of those executive ears that they'll like, oh, we can't ignore this anymore. So maybe we should get our ducks in a row.
How does it work? Because the TV show This Is Us, I don't know if you guys watched it, the ending tied into the beginning. It's like they already had everything kind of planned out. Is that the same thing with something like this, where you have the story arc of Andy and, all the supporting characters and family, etc. So you actually know where it's going to end. And now the challenge is, one, getting the second season, but, kind of how you're going to kind of build that out.
Yeah, I think it varies from creator to creator. I think some people kind of give themselves a general direction and they just sort of feel their way through. I think for us, we knew exactly where we wanted to end up. And it was just a question of like giving ourselves enough space so that we could do interesting things or unexpected things or surprising things to the audience or for even ourselves along the way there. So we definitely sort of know like what the end point is. And I think Bryan mentioned Hunter x Hunter. I think it's the type of show where we would want to invest as much in the other characters as we've invested in Andy, so that her journey sort of reaches a natural end point. And then you kind of continue with some of the other seeds that you've planted. Because again, the sort of larger message is not necessarily just about Andy's journey. It's about this examination of what is it like for anyone to pursue their passion. And we've sort of introduced a bunch of characters who we've already seen in various ways. They have different dreams that, kind of don't just start and end with Andy. So it varies from person to person, but I think for us, we like to have it all mostly mapped out.
Because like I've worked on like traditional kind of like adult sitcoms. They don't plan out anything. It's just like per moment. This is funny. They take script pitches and they'll work it into their schedule if they like it or not. But with this show, we built the actual narrative within the outline of how we were doing the season. So like there's mysteries that we haven't resolved that are in there, and those answers would only get revealed if we got further through the story.
One of the questions, I don't know if I know you have the answer. I don't know if you want to tell me. So Craig, I mean, he presents racially ambiguous or white. I don't know. but then his aunt is black. And coming from a family that is very multi-ethnic, and there's so many different versions of blackness within my family, I know what that feels like. Like my mom looks like she's white. So my question is, is this his aunt on the mom's side, the dad's side? Did she find him on the street? Can I get a backstory of Craig and Aunt P?
I don't want to give it all away, but I'll confirm that they are definitely blood related, and there is a story about what's up with Case Poblana's sister, because that's Craig's mom, and how Case Poblana is kind of the black sheep of their family.
Yeah, I don't know if it's within the melanated community that I picked it up, because I'm like, this is possible. I just need to know how.
Yeah.
Like big families, like I often discuss that. Like in my family, I'm like the middle complexion, but I got cousins who are like fair, way lighter than me. I got cousins who are fair, darker than me, and like it's literally within like the same family community. So when you see Craig, you're just like, how's that happen?
Yeah.
It
happens.
It's also with Craig, I think we also want you to ask, just personality wise, like how are those people related? Where Case Poblana is just this sort of driven, when the glimpse that you see her when she's young, she's this driven person who has all this talent. Then Craig is just a fucking bonehead. He's just like a unscrupulous knucklehead. And so that's also kind of some seeds for the future of like, what does that relationship, like, how did that come about?
And if you trusted us at this far through this first season of the story, you could probably imagine that we've dealt with the emotional core of these characters, even characters like Craig, who everyone's annoyed by initially, which I'm like, that's what I want. You should be annoyed by him. That's by design.
No, it's like I said, it's very, getting into it. There's just see so many different personalities, but determination, especially being a creative, right? Because, you embark on this journey of creative and nobody has the same path. So there's a lot of like kind of similarities with that. And then, just being a Black woman and saying, okay, no, this is what I want. Like there's so many things, because like my mom works for the government. So when I was growing up, it's like, no, like get yourself a government job, work there for 20 years. And like, why are you making life harder for yourself? So it definitely resonated for me, with Andy's story. It's like, okay, no, I'm going to go to LA and I'm going to do this. Wait, why do you want to do that? Like, this is not the plan.
Yeah.
We definitely went back and forth a little bit on how Andy's parents would react to her eventual determination. And it was considered at one point, correct me if I'm wrong, that we were probably going to give them a negative reaction, but I remember you came out, Justin, and said like, nah, they're gonna fully support her.
Yeah, and I think that was because our sort of North Star was to try to depict the variety of ways and experiences that people have when they sort of decide their path in life and what it looks like when they follow it. It felt kind of unexpected to have her parents, instead of being the obstacle to it, because I think you would maybe expect that, to be like, okay, they're supportive, but really they're mostly just like scared. And I feel like that was an opportunity to kind of get outside the trope of what that moment was and speak to a little bit more what the truth is, which is a lot of times parents are just scared and they would love to fully give you their blessing, but they're sort of drawing from their own experiences and their own hardships and projecting it onto you and trying to make sure you don't go down that same road. And that also gave us an opportunity to, with Mikey, actually do that version where the parent isn't supportive, and what does that look like, and what sort of catalyst does that create for Mikey and the opportunities for him to be the one who has to determine for himself if he wants to follow his dream or not.
This first arc is basically like the bad parents arc. It's like you can see like a good example from Andy's parents, and then the bad example from Mikey's parents, and then the worst example from Birdie's parents.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, that was, I didn't think it was going to end like that. And then now we're kind of going through the episode. So as far as people who haven't watched this, why should they watch it, or what can they get out of it?
I think this is we're in a time in this country where things are more uncertain than ever. And the thing that I started out saying, and again, we really started production back in 2022. So I was saying this then, it's even more true now, is that we're in a period of such crazy uncertainty that if you are a young person, I don't envy you. I don't envy having, graduating from college or graduating from high school and having to decide what your path is in this landscape where nothing is set in stone and nothing feels solid. And so to me, if you're someone like that, or if you can even relate with that, this is a show for you, because I was trying to channel, I think, that uncertainty and what that feels like and how scary it can be when you decide there's something that you want for yourself that all signs point point to no, all signs point to that's not possible. And you decide to do it anyway. You step out on faith and you go on that journey anyway. So like I said, I feel like that's universal, especially where we are now in this country. So if you're someone who feels that, then this is a show that even if you don't like wrestling, this is a really nice way to sort of ease you into it. And I promise by the end of it, you'll be like, oh, maybe I should give this wrestling stuff a shot.
I mean, you've said it before, like the series is basically just about like following your ambitions, no matter what they are. And like what we present with Andy is like there's a lot of obstacles in her way, not even just like challenges and personal challenges, but then there's also going to be societal structures because she's not supposed to wrestle. So like the world's trying to tell you that you should do something else, but she feels it in like her heart and her gut that like, nah, this is what I want to do. And I do it the right way or I do it the wrong way, but I'm going to do it. It is tough right now because because I'm old, I graduated in 2000. So I can tell you right now that it was not this way. Literally 20, 25 years ago, we're dealing with some real serious stuff in this country. And part of that is not even just you're not on your own by that. If anything, the show also shows you that you can find your community and your strength in your community is going to be your real passion of life beyond just simply like the thing I want to do. Find out the thing that we all need to do.
And last question. Another thing that I noticed is very much like highlighting the wrestling moves. Like sometimes if you have like an action cartoon, it's just kind of like, oh, it's just a broad sense. Whereas this one's more of a education where it's like you have the moves, like you have Andy's story and just kind of like what you were saying, Justin, it's like you don't necessarily have to be a wrestling fan. If you're going to watch this, you're going to learn some things. So I guess what was the decision to go that direction? And then I guess putting it together, did you have to educate the people that were, I guess doing the animation, what they need to do, or how did you kind of layer all of that together?
That was something I came into the project knowing I wanted to do. That was kind of the most fun part, was the opportunity to like, again, I think if people know who know wrestling know why it's great and they know what's awesome about it. And it's one of those things where like, if you're in it, you're in it. But I think there's a lot of people who, even as wrestling is really big now, it's probably as big as sometimes, where people are kind of like scared off by how insular it feels. And so I kind of wanted this show to be like I said, like, look at how great this stuff is. And even if you don't know why it's great when you're coming into it, we're going to kind of walk you through it. And in a way, it's going to kind of mirror Andy's journey. So we got an opportunity to basically give like a primer kind of on some really basic like, here's your crash course on wrestling. And we got to do it in a way that felt narratively appropriate because you're also mirroring Andy learning stuff about wrestling that even if she loves the sport, she doesn't know the more technical aspects of it.
There's a lot of things we didn't touch on, like ring out. We didn't do any ring outs. We haven't done any tag team matches. There's a lot of like the little nitty gritty, or even someone who doesn't play by the rules, someone who's like thinks behind the back of the refs, like that. Even though we do have protagonists, antagonists, villains, heroes, but like we don't really deal with. We haven't done a babyface or a heel turn yet. That'll be really good in the story. Who's gonna happen? I'm not gonna say.
Like I said, I'm invested now, so I want to see what happens. Now I'm even more invested to find out this whole Aunt P and Craig situation. What can we do as people who've watched the product help move it along to a season 2? Like, how can we, as a community, get this to season 2?
Yeah, I would say it's on Max. Run those numbers up, tweet about it, talk about it, Instagram about it. At Max on Twitter, Cartoon Network, just anyone who is a decision maker, and make sure that your love for the show is visible, and make sure that they know that you want more of it.
Yeah, watching it, obviously it's was it on midnight on Adult Swim? Yeah, midnight Adult Swim, Saturday nights, and next day on Max is what the ad says. Tell your friends, tell your families, your community. Like if you're in a circle and like, oh, we like cartoons or we like anime, share it. If oh, we like wrestling but we're not so sure on cartoons and anime, share it. Oh, we like emotional storytelling and really good motivational things, share it. Oh, we like stories that center Black or POC characters, share it. But yeah, the more kind of has crossover, I think, is gonna only help us. So it's like, it's not just the show for Black women in wrestling, it's a show for everybody. And I think Andy's journey is the fact that it's like, it'll hopefully show people, it's like, no, we're no different than anyone else. We have dreams and aspirations. Our gender and our fucking race doesn't define us. Can I curse? I just curse, I'm sorry. But like, these things don't define us. It's really about a human story. So if you're a human being and you like a really good like introductory to a thoughtful action series can be, I would check out Invincible Fight Girl.
With that being said, where can everybody follow you guys?
Bryan, you go first because I'm not anywhere.
You're not anywhere.
Yeah, Justin's
I'm
a
not.
ghost. You've been a ghost as long as I've known you. And we didn't even talk about that. I've known this guy since he graduated from college, and we went to the same at different times. But when he came out of school, I saw his work. I'm like, you're a better artist than me, and I'm working professionally. Very talented young man here. You can find me on Dark King Zoro on Twitter or Blue Sky, and you can watch new episodes of Invincible Fight Girl. I also frequent the One Piece podcast. If you like any sort of One Piece stuff, hit me up. I'll talk about it. It's my favorite thing.
If you catch me in the street, say hi. That's it.
You're just walking around. It's like, hey.
Oh, hey, that's the black guy. Hey, hi.
Thank you guys so much. Like I said, I'm gonna run it back, watch it again. It's an amazing, incredible show. Thank you for putting it together, and thank you guys for watching. You can follow me everywhere at TK Trinidad. You can follow Women's Wrestling Talk on all social media platforms at www.talkpod.com. Thank you guys so much for watching Women's Wrestling Talk, the #1 women's wrestling show on the planet. Ciao, y'all.
Thanks for joining WWT. Don't forget to like us on all social media platforms at WWTalkPod. Like and subscribe on all video and audio platforms, like yesterday, my G. And check out our website at www.talkpod.com. Thanks for watching Women's Wrestling Talk, the #1 women's wrestling network